Okay, I told you that I was going to tell you a ghost story. Now, this isn't a regular ghost story. I didn't get this out of a book. I didn't see it in a movie or on a TV show. This is something that really happened to me. Ever since I was a child, I've been a spirit sensitive. I don't talk about it. I don't advertise it. It's just something that's always been a part of me. And I think only 2 people in my whole life have ever known about this, because it's just not something you talk about. And over the decades, I have learned to protect myself against it, to put up a wall. Otherwise, I'd probably go crazy. And it's not just ghosts that I sense. It can be demons, angels, other supernatural beings. Now, whether or not you believe me is entirely up to you. I only know what I've experienced. So I'm going to tell you this story. We'll call it the plantation story. The job I had before, I traveled a lot. And I liked that job. But on one particular trip was to Portland, Oregon. And while we were there, a group of people decided to go out to eat. So we traveled by bus out to a plantation. That's the best word for it. It was in a horseshoe configuration with a courtyard in the middle, which is where the tables were set for you to eat. So a group of about, I want to say 12 of us, sat out there, ordered our food, and carried on a conversation. Now, this place had been a plantation, I think, originally, then a hospital, then an asylum. So while I was sitting there, I was just chatting away with other people and listening to stories. But sometimes I'm in certain situations where the appearances of these ghosts or spirits are so overwhelming, it's kind of hard to completely shut them all out. So I'll tell you what I experienced. See, the thing was, because it had been different things at different times, I didn't experience just the one layer. In other words, just when it was an asylum or just when it was a plantation. So let me start with a happy story first. While we were sitting there, I sensed a man. When he appeared to me, which sometimes they don't appear at the same age like when they passed, but kind of the happy part of their life or the more prominent part of their life, that's how they appear to me. This gentleman was slender, attractive, probably, when he appeared to me, his late 20s, early 30s. He was a slave there on the plantation. Probably, I don't know. I'm trying to explain this. When he appeared to me, he was happy. I got the impression he had been there a long time. He told me when he was younger, he had been pulled from his family, brought to this plantation, and sold as a slave. Now, he was a black man or an African American, however you want to accept it. And he did very well there. He took care of the horses. He worked around the plantation, and he became a favorite of the plantation owner. Now, this particular plantation owner was a fairly good man. He treated his servants well. He had a happy household. It was a very productive plantation. So it was actually a pretty happy time. But for some reason, this man appeared to me and wanted to talk to me. I think he just wanted to share his story with me. So eventually, once the war came through and things began to happen, and slavery was abolished, his master freed him. All the slaves were freed there on the plantation. So he had a choice. He could leave. But he was happy there. Why would he leave? Very few of them left. They had a good job. They were taken care of. They had a good place to live, food to eat, and it was a job. So most of them stayed there, including himself. He was there until the ripe old age of his late 70s when he passed away there. During that time, he got married. He had 4 children, and he had a happy life there. So that one wasn't that bad. However, the other one I'm going to tell you about was very different. This was a fairly young woman. This happened when the place became an asylum. And opening myself up to her was very difficult because I heard a multitude of voices in anguish, in confusion, in despair, but let's just talk about her. I don't want to go into all the rest of them. So she told me her story. What happens, unfortunately for me, what happens a lot of times, and what is once they sense that I'm there and that I can hear them, then they want to talk to me. They want to tell me their story, or they want to, me to help them. And sometimes I can. But this woman was brought there when she was very young. She was about 16. Her father was a very prominent man in Portland, very important. And her mother was afraid of him. He was that strict, that hard of a man. And she fell in love with a young man who worked in the stables. He took care of the horses. He, is it called shod their feet, put the horseshoes on there. That was his job. He worked in the stable. And she fell in love with him. He was a little bit older than her, about, I get the impression, 19, 20, something like that. And she wanted to marry him. Her mother found out about it. She overheard them. And her mother was so afraid of her father that she told him. You have to kind of understand the times. This was the late 1800s, and when you were a woman during that time, life was hard. Life was very difficult. Unless you were fortunate enough to find yourself, with a job, which very, very few women there had. Your only choice was to marry. And she had been married. She was, in her 40s, and where do you go? If a man abandoned you then, you had very little chance of remarrying. You really had nowhere to go. You had no money. You were not entitled to money back then. So her mother was frightened of her father and told him. Her father was furious. I mean, so furious. And he decided to take her and put her in the asylum, claiming that my battery's about dying. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to put it on a charge. I'm back. So at that time, her father decided to put her in this asylum. And the way he did it is he told the people there that his daughter was hysterical, that she went into hysterics, which was not that far from the truth. She was distraught once she was taken there. When she knew what was going on, she went into total despair. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't talk to anyone. So she was pretty much abandoned there. And, every day she kept expecting her mother or her father, which she pretty much knew that wasn't going to happen, but she kept hoping, or even her boyfriend to come get her. Nobody showed up. She was left there. So this continued for years. And you have to remember where she was. She was locked in a room, and all around her she heard people wailing and crying and screaming and these horrendous noises. And she was there for 4 years, which finally pretty much did drive her crazy. So as a result, when she was around 20 years old, by that time, all she would do was, she was just a quiet person. She wouldn't talk to anyone. She talked very little while she was there. So she basically found a way to get her window open in her room, and she jumped. Now this place we were at was like a 3 or 4 story building. So she jumped out of like the 3rd floor, landed hard on the courtyard, and very quickly died after that. And you just have to think, for 4 years this poor child was heartbroken. That's the way it was, and that's the story that she told me. So all I could see was her sitting like on the edge of the windowsill, like the 3rd story windowsill, and that's where she stayed most of the time. You know, not really having any place to go, not really knowing where to go or what to do. That's where she stayed. And like I said, she was not the only one there. I could hear a lot of other voices and feel a lot of other presence. Now, sometimes when I'm in these situations, I can help these people. I can help them move on and pass on. The unfortunate thing is, I was with a huge group of people, about 12 people, that did not allow me to do what I needed to do. I can remember going to the bathroom and just being overwhelmed with a sense of I couldn't do anything for her. I couldn't help her. I can even remember getting in the van when we were on our way out and looking back and just wanting to cry, just wanting to break down and cry. It hurt my heart so bad that I had to leave her there. So that's my ghost story. It's not my only one. I've experienced a lot of things in my lifetime, and perhaps I'll tell you another one. If you're interested, comment below and let me know. So again, you may or may not believe this. That's entirely up to you. I only know what I experienced and what I felt, and yeah, that it's not always a pleasant thing. So thank you for watching. As always, subscribe so you know when another video is going up. Feel free to comment and give it a like. Love my likes. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Happy Halloween.